Conservation District at 9104-371-922 to apply.
And good morning to you. Back on this Thursday, this is post our general manager, Sandy Cookman, deceasing, and her homegoing service was Tuesday. I thought it was just marvelous.
Yeah.
We got the Marion with us today. This is his annual, not his annual, but his monthly show. That was really a great service, man. I was.
Well, it was deserving of Sandy.
Certainly.
You know, I mean, all that she did to serve this community with everything that she did. And
right.
She was behind the scenes, and so you don't know everything that her hands touch. But you had to send her out right. Heart and prayers go out to Wes. Because when you saw one, you saw the other.
That's it.
And so. We know it's some tough times ahead for him and her daughter, but it was a good celebration.
It was.
And that says a lot when people can come together, celebrate
right.
your life. Yeah.
Enjoyed your comments as well as others, and you guys did take a marvelous job. And
appreciate
it. This kind of your line of work, so you see a whole lot of this. In the past 41 years, I've seen a lot of it too.
Yeah.
With my line of work, but. I don't want to play comparisonitis, but I would just say that was a stellar move by this community to celebrate someone that was certainly worthy of celebration.
Absolutely, and the fact that you've got national gospel artists and other
That's
people
true.
who come and really, in my, like I said, in my line of work, the service should reflect the life of the person.
That's true.
And I think that service reflected her life and the things that the areas that she touched. And, you learn a lot from services because, you may know a person from one aspect,
That's
but
true.
you don't realize the full circle of the people that are in their universe. And it was a real diverse group of people who came, and the We Do family, of course, showed up strong. And it was just a great homegoing.
Really. Well, look, I hope you're doing well today. You and I were having a little banter before we started, because I was telling you, as a citizen, how it looks to me, and of course, you're not one of the picketers, but Mr. Mayor, it almost seemed like that everything we try to bring here, we don't want it. Well, we don't want that. Well, we don't want that. We don't want that. And whatever you bring here. People are just against it, but I'm riding around thinking, well, what do you want?
Right.
Because you're saying you don't want this, you don't want that. You're finding major faults with everything, and the latest thing is the data centers.
Yeah. And
now, I'll admit, I have not done my due diligence in research with this, but, I know you know more about it than I do. I mean, you can't speak for the naysayers, but
right.
These things are here, and they're working in a positive manner somewhere.
Right.
What I mean, how are they being approved and accepted in other areas, and how are they functioning within communities outside of Cumberland County?
You make a valid point. There are a few hundred in North Carolina. We don't have a single one.
So it's a few hundred in North Carolina?
From my understanding,
okay.
There's a few hundred either in North Carolina or programmed to be built in the next few years.
Okay.
But, it's a big state. You got 10, 12 million people. So
100 counties, right.
Every app on your phone has some AI component that is tied to a data center's existence, which is basically storage of servers, okay? And they use a lot of power, which is what some of the environmental concerns are, is that you use a lot of power. And they said, well, if you're using that much capacity over here, it has to raise the rates on everyone. And so that is where the folks who say, I don't want it, come in, and then some of them require a lot of water for cooling purposes, but there's some that don't. And so I think the communities that I've talked to, for instance, Rockingham County,
okay.
all right, a $40 billion tax base, and their whole tax base is only $4 billion, right? So it's 10x one
40
project.
with the B? Billion?
Yes, with the B. And 4 to now 44.
Wow.
Okay? Tremendous change of things that it can do to its schools, its roads, its community, right? And they made a conscious decision that Duke said, hey, we've got the capacity to deliver it. You can do it. Now, should Rockingham County do 10? They probably shouldn't. But you need to have some presence in that because the world is moving this way.
Correct.
Technology will get better. You know, you remember how cell phones were back in the day? They were this big, and now they're this big.
Right.
And technology will get better. You don't want to miss the opportunity. And like you said, you know, you have people who, you know, people are entitled to their opinion, but, you know, it's usually the same crowd that comes and with the opposition, but there are not a lot of answers to your first question. To your other question, well, what do you want? You know, titanium plant. We want better jobs. They come in and pay $100,000 jobs. We don't want that. Environmental concerns. And so that's an easy red herring for people to get behind that really don't have the facts, because I don't know that I've seen a lot of evidence, concrete evidence, that one or two of these projects will have that kind of impact. PwC has the capacity, or in certain cases, what we're trying to do is we miss a Toyota, right? Because Toyota requires the same amount of power as a data center, 300 or 400 megawatts.
Okay. Right.
We don't have anywhere where that is that's readily available with a plot of land. So if you can find a data center that will pay for the power to be ran to that site, then you can get a Toyota and some other larger manufacturers that everybody says, why those jobs are not coming to Fayetteville? You have to prepare for it. But, you know, it's you know, people have a right to their opinion, but, you know, when people come to me with a problem, I also look for them to come with solutions.
Right.
Yeah.
But now, before this show started, you was talking about Huntsville, Alabama?
Yeah.
Okay, could you?
Right, yeah. So when me, Chairman Deviere, Dr. Soros, and Robert Van Gens went to Huntsville on a fact-finding mission, we learned about all the great things they're doing for STEM. We learned about what they're doing for cyber and technology. And, you know, it's a community that has NASA as the home, FBI headquarters. It has a lot of federal presence, but a lot of higher end. Meta came into that community, and in addition to building the data center, they said, we want to contribute to your community. And they wrote a $1 billion check to the schools.
Wow.
So now, if Cumberland County Schools got a $1 billion check that they weren't expecting, what does that mean for the quality of our schools and the quality of our kids and all? You know, they've got about $800 and something million worth of school construction that they need to do from deferred maintenance. That solves that problem with one data center or one Meta donation. And so, you know, we have to think forward. We have to think ahead. Now, what they did say was that we will now start to restrict the number of data centers that we allow, but they have some. You can't just say, I don't want any, and not get any, and the whole world grow around you. And we've seen the results of that with I-95 and the lack of water throughout the county. We're dealing with that generations later.
Yeah. Well, it's not like kind of some of the same people. I don't know all the names, but when I'm looking at them, Mr. Mayor, they look the same to me. And some of the names I'm familiar with.
Well, you probably gonna know everybody's name because you're gonna get some emails after this.
Well, it ain't been mad at Troy. I'm just saying, look, look. If I'm an umpire, I'm calling balls and strikes. I'm like, okay, you know, y'all don't want that. But what I mean, I'm just saying is that because I wanted to make a logical argument, and I said, look, I need to take the time to assess again the education level of our community, the age level of our community. We are still tier 1. How are we going to climb out this hole? I mean, it sounds like that one data center might get us over the hump.
Well, 2, right?
2,
I'm glad you brought that up. So on one of the criteria for tier 1 is your tax base.
Correct.
Right? We're about $6 to $8 billion short of where we need to be to get out of that category, in that particular category.
Right.
One data center could be $3 to $4 billion. Right, in tax base. So you get 1 or 2, and now you have solved that problem. And now you're just working on population and income.
Well, I mean, our population is probably going to come if you have that kind of thing. You know, you got to have a magnet. For people that want to come to your community. But I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but look, are we just Amish? We just going to make our own soap and ride around with mules and I'm growing my beard, and I guess the lady wear their bonnets.
Yeah, well, you have a certain population that don't want change, you know. And,
Obviously.
But unfortunately, we make decisions for the greater good of everybody.
Right.
And so I think that, you know, on the one hand, you say, why does Google and Apple not look at our communities? But when Google and Apple are looking at your communities, you know, or Meta, you have all of this stuff going on. So guess what? They look at the next community that they don't have that problem. And so, you know, I think we'll get through it. We'll put some rules around it. What I did hear is the legislature is going to put the rules around it. And they will take that power away from cities and counties to restrict them, or they will put the standard in place, and then it'll be done. There's no debate to that. And then the buzz in D.C. is that they're looking at these small nuclear reactors, which, you know, whatever you want to say about that, that would be on federal property, at least at the military base here, which if Fort Bragg had that ability to generate that level of power, or these data centers were allowed to now expedite the permitting process and generate their own power, then your concern for the light bill goes out of the window.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you know, I mean, I fully understand. I mean, like I said, I'm looking at it. I'm like, you know, I mean, what are we going to do to move forth? Because we need to do something that moves us forth. And for those individuals out there, whomever you are, I mean, that you just want to give stuff away. I mean, because like it can't be free stuff.
Right.
I mean, all for everybody.
Somebody's paying for it.
That's what I'm saying. It's just like, you know, I understand it's not your money and you are controlling how it's spent. But at the end of the day, if it overburdens taxpayers, because I personally believe this. I believe that if I live long enough, I believe that at some point in America, it's going to be a tax revolt.
You're probably right about that.
I mean, because I think folks going to just get mad and say, look, you ain't taking no more of my dollar. You see what I'm saying? Because, I mean, the way the government is going, they'll take more. You earn $1, and the majority of it will be going to them and not to you.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some very, you know, I met a couple of mayors in D.C. earlier this week, one from Youngstown.
Right.
They've got a local income tax.
That's
like New York.
Ohio, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So imagine how mad these folks would be.
Well, I heard about what happened. I have a sister that lives in Stafford, Virginia, my only sister. And I'm like, man, they come up with 50 new taxes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, literally.
Yeah.
50 new taxes. I mean, you go out and get a weed eater, and it's a special tax on a weed eater. I mean, just like, I mean, bruh.
Yeah. And on the data center point real quick, what's different here, the city gets a rebate or a percentage of the electric fund revenues, right? And so this is not like communities where Duke gets that money and the rates go up.
Right.
The more revenue that comes in PwC, our amount that they give us back that goes to help this community increases. Right. And so if you have a major purchase of power here, you know, and that electric fund transfer goes from 10 or 12 million where it is now to 20, 25, you have a significant impact to the overall quality of life here, to where you're asking, you know, for some things that, you know, right now you're having to do it in a measured way, but it'll be new tax revenue from the property tax side and new revenue from the electric side.
Right. Because now I remember going back to Sanderson Farms, and so I said, well, what about it? Look, let's go back to that. Because now we can look back in the rearview mirror at that situation and what that happened. Oh, we don't want this and da-da-da-da-da and blah, blah, blah. It's going to be feathers everywhere. I mean, all you do is just drive down to 20. Yeah. Every time I'm going south, sometimes I just swing down there to see. Now, that was certainly an economic anchor because all of the other businesses that have grown up around that. Yeah. And we stubbed our nose at them, and then, well, you got folk even running for office now that was against it. I mean, you know, so, I mean, it was, really? You know? Okay, I don't understand. We even as voters, though, are going to have to say, look, this is what I believe. We're going to protect people that want to grow our community. Yeah. And we're going to get behind you, and we're going to vote for you, and let these people on the fringes out here, let them do what they want to do. But the bum rush you guys and come in a meeting and raise all this hell and everything else, and some people that, well, the community doesn't want this. Well, 10 people.
Right, don't represent the community.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, the voters do that.
That's right.
The voters decide who they want to lead their community for those terms, right? And so even though you have, a very loud group, very visible group that comes and oftentimes finds fault in everything, the voters choose who they choose, and they don't. That's what they have to realize, that I'm making a decision for 200,000, not 12 or 20. And they are very passionate about it, and I respect that. But they also have to respect that there's a diverse opinion, and that decisions have to be made for the greater good.
Right. And so when it comes to building an entertainment center downtown, then let's raise all the hell in the world. Let's just get crazy and everything else. We gotta have it. Like, that's gonna be now, mind you, good or bad.
Right.
It wasn't gonna bring a whole bunch of money to here. Not the kind of money they're talking about.
Well, interesting point, right? Because you do have to increase the amenities, right?
Right.
But the problem we have downtown when they looked at it, the government owns everything.
That's true.
This is your prime tax district, and there's City Hall, there's the courthouse, 2 courthouses, all of these government, the Arts Council, the Children's Museum, all of the stuff down there, 60-70% of it doesn't pay taxes between what the government is and the nonprofits. And so that was going to be an economic driver, but I'm hoping that we can replace that maybe with something that will go on the tax roll, that maybe there's a hotel, or maybe there is, trying to see where we are with using some of the current assets that we have without the government continuing to buy and build. I'm real passionate about that with Doug, that we don't need to buy and build everything. We've got to leave some room for the private sector who pays taxes to do it. But we'll see. I'm excited to kind of hear the county's plan and how that plays out. But hopefully there's some economic incentives that will either run across the city or the county or both, that can put something in that space, either that will actually write a tax check at the end of the year.
Yeah, because you got to have that revenue.
Yeah.
And you can't just burden the residents,
The homeowners,
right? The homeowners, because it's
that's what's carrying the weight.
Yeah, that's what they. It's something in front of the General Assembly now,
right.
Discussing that whole issue of property taxes.
Well, that's it. But, they don't give us but so many levers to use to generate revenue. And if you don't have any industry, like I said, a data center at $4 billion pays, $10-15 million a year in taxes. That's pressure that comes off of a homeowner who has to pay his $1,000 or $800 at the end of the year. Maybe that number goes down to half that much because you now got industry helping to carry the weight. So, I don't think that some of the opponents have answers to if not that, then what? Or can't you do both and? They get you pitted on this idea versus that idea.
Well, you would think that because a number of them are particularly concerned with the unhoused population. I got all that. Look, I'm sympathetic to that.
Right.
Look, I've kept a homeless person, a child, for 5 years in my home.
Wow.
Getting no money for anybody.
Yeah.
And that's a part of my resume. I'm not saying that to brag or anything like that, but I'm saying is that some of these folk that are raising all this hell, they ain't doing nothing except spending taxpayer money. That's what they want to just give stuff away. But what do you, if you're that passionate about it, what are you personally doing?
Right.
Other than giving my money away.
Right. Where does the money come from, right?
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Because they'll line up a lot of times. Some of these groups come and want some of these programs supported, homelessness, mental health. Where does the money come from if it's not from the tax revenue?
Right.
How do you get tax revenue without having and being open for business? And so you can't make business the villain and then turn around and ask business to carry the water for funding things. Or, like you said, the homeowner that doesn't get up and put their shirt on in opposition and come down there with a picket sign, who just goes to work every day, they still carrying the load when they have to pay the property tax on their home don't they deserve relief?
Right.
If PwC gives now $20 million in a rebate back, or if now industry like the titanium plant is now carrying the load, or if people now have more money to spend in this community, and so more businesses and jobs follow that, or better schools, and so that's kind of, it's very complex, but you have to take the emotion out of it and make a good sound decision.
Yeah, because even renters are going to pay because the owners are going to pass the cost on, and that's fair. I mean, if you present them with a big bill and your rent's been XYZ, then hey, look, guy, I love you, but hey, look, the guys downtown, they're coming after me. So look, we got to share this.
Yeah.
If they give it to me, I got to pass it to you.
Right. Yeah. And hey, look, we've got one of the tightest rental markets in the country because of the allowance. The base pays is the base. A lot of landlords set it accordingly, but yes, that definitely has pressure that it puts on rental payment too. Renters. Yeah.
Right. Well, we're approaching a break, but I do want to talk about it. But talking about that, if you know what's going on down what used to be Vic's down the street, and that property over there, I think that's prime for development. Yeah. Well, look, coming after the break, can we talk about it a little bit? I heard a little bit about it, but you the one driving the ship, so you tell me what's going on, because I think the city is involved in that, correct?
Definitely. Yep.
Okay, right. Well, look, we'll be back again, Mayor Mitch Colvin, and don't be mad at him, be mad at me today, okay? Just saying. Look, I don't do my homework on data centers. Y'all just getting all flustered and everything, and I'm like, but look, just tell me what you do want, okay?
Right, there you go.
I give you my number. You can check me out on social media. Just tell me what you do want. I know what you don't want, but tell me what you do want.
Right.